Welcome back to the What Does Your Mum Think podcast. What's going on? Welcome, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm very well, actually. I'm good. I'm sort of relieved. We've been having technical issues, haven't we? But I'm relieved to have got through it without needing the help of one of my young employees.
There's always something going on. Right, we always kick things off with a quick fire round to get things going. Do you know what I mean? Get warmed up, all that stuff, right? So,
yep.
Can you remember the first thing that you designed?
Yes, it was. It was kind of art and design, and it was drawing wine bottles with wax candles, and then painting over it with blue ink. My dad showed me how to do it.
Oh wow! Did you have a side hustle as a kid in your early years?
A side hustle? No. No, I was really into sport as a kid. Sport and art.
Nice. One early creative influence you didn't realise was an influence at the time?
Christ. That's a really brilliant question, but I think this sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it was Van Gogh. And the reason it was Van Gogh, and obviously he would have never known, but it was my dad had studied A-level art, and I found the books one day. And I found a Van Gogh book, and I started copying all the paintings.
That nice.
Nice. Be careful with this one, Paul. But what was on your bedroom wall when you were growing up?
Oh, that's brilliant. I'm gonna say I'm gonna have to say a poster of the Style Council, but you probably don't even remember them.
I don't think.
No, I don't.
What would the 15-year-old you think of your career today and where you've got to?
It'd be absolutely astounded. He'd have no concept of it. I mean, a vague notion of wanting to move to London, a vague notion of wanting to do something alternative or a different kind of route through life. But at 50, the 15-year-old me knew that London had got Big Ben in it and not much else, you know, and this career in graphic design I've got no idea about.
And to finish off, Paul,
I love it.
What was your mum's reaction when you told her you wanted to be a graphic designer?
Yeah, I thought you were going to ask me this, and what's interesting for me is that, like, my mum was 100% behind everything that I did, and she was just get yourself off and crack on. It was my dad that told me that there's no chance, mate. You're going to go to college and become an accountant and live in Leeds. None of which I did.
That sounds familiar.
I love it. Right, nice. I love that.
That was great,
so,
Paul.
I love that, Paul. They're good. Yeah, really good. So if we take it back to the beginning, where did you grow up exactly, and what was life like there?
I grew up in Barnsley in South Yorkshire, and I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and Barnsley was a very typical northern working class town, built around an industry, which was coal mining. All my grandparents, and that generation were miners, but my dad was a teacher, and he'd begun to climb the slippery pole, or whatever the phrase is, and got himself out of the sort of terraced house upbringing that he'd had, and he'd become a teacher. So I guess I felt like I was having, it's a strange thing to say now, but I felt like I was having a middle class upbringing, but it was in the context of Barnsley, which was, an industrial town about to become a post-industrial town. So that was my upbringing, and when I was 13, 14, the miners' strike happened, and that was a really profound effect on all of us and all of my generation, and it's something that we were aware of because it was around us, and a lot of the kids that I was at school with, their parents either worked in the coal industry or in the kind of feeder industries. So the whole world changed in our kind of mid-teens, and it was a very kind of politicizing time to grow up, I think, in that area, in that climate. That's what was happening around us in the world. But my life was quite privileged, I think, in that kind of area and time. My parents were supportive, and I did a lot of sport, and they really were behind me in that. And it was good. I wasn't aware that I wasn't really aware that growing up in Barnsley was any different to other places. It's only since I've grown up that I've learnt that.
Was there anything kind of, through them times, was there anything kind of creative that came out of it? Do you remember designing any posters or anything like that in that time for for what was kind of going on around it?
Not at the time, but I was really into art, and I was into painting and drawing. And by the time I was 14 or 15, I'd kind of started to think that I was going to go to art college and not to sixth form college, which was quite a big thing to do at that time. But in subsequent years, when I did my I did my masters in graphic design at St Martin's in the early 90s, and the final piece that I did for that was a kind of photo documentary book about the demise of the coal industry. And I went back and I interviewed a lot of people who'd been involved in it. And there were interesting things that had come out of that, interesting political things. There was a really strong women's group that had emerged from the strike, and I went and spoke to them. I also went and spoke to Barry Hines, who was the writer who had written A Kestrel for a Knave, which became the film Kes. So I went back to it, and I was fascinated by it for quite a long time.
Yeah, nice. It always reminds me of what Craig Oldham did. The the In Love in Memory of Work. That was a piece based on what came out of that kind of it.
Yeah, I was going to mention Craig. I guess you guys probably grew up fairly close to each other then.
I guess so. Yeah. Where's he from? Do you know?
He's Manchester, right?
I think he's just out.
He's
I think he's just out of Manchester. Yeah.
Yeah. I always loved that book that he did. Really nice. I remember when he presented it to us at university and all the details of like printing the coal in the printing press and stuff like that. And when he was screen printing it and stuff, like really nice. Yeah, that's awesome, Paul. I love that. So, what kind of like stuff other than that? What kind of like creative stuff was you into early on, other than sports and stuff? Was you drawing a lot? Was there any kind of cartoons that kind of inspired you and things like that?
I was chatting to someone about this the other day. That when I can't remember how old I was. When I was very young, my mum. This sounds really silly and banal, but my mum bought me a 1 metre square piece of hardboard, and it became like the base for so many things, like really typical kid things, like soldiers, stuff like that. But it became a base of. I used to build scenes and like countryside scenes and all sorts of things. She still mentions it, my mum, that I got more pleasure out of that simple blank board than any of the toys that I was bought, because it kind of relied on your imagination, and I guess I was already sort of imagining things rather than relying on things.
Yeah, nice.
We've heard quite a bit about your time in Barnsley then, growing up in the north. I noticed that you jumped around quite a bit at universities. There was like Ravensbourne, Nova Scotia and UAL. What was that journey like, and how did that come about?
Yeah. Well, I went to Ravensbourne not really knowing too much about it, other than I'd seen the prospectus, and we were on this really fantastic general art and design course in Barnsley, where there were a few of us, and we just had we had an exceptional group of tutors just for that period of time, and they enabled us to feel confident about applying to London colleges. So some of my friends went to Kingston and other more kind of well-known colleges, but we got this prospectus through from Ravensbourne, and no one had heard about it, and I certainly hadn't. And I went to visit it just on the off chance. I also went to visit LCP and St Martin's and Hounslow and various places. But I went to visit Ravensbourne, and the building in those days, it had been designed by county architects in the 70s and early 80s. And it was a modernist building, so it was built specifically for art and design, and all the studio spaces were beautiful with north-facing light and everything, and it felt like a place of work. It didn't feel flashy, and the graphic design coming out of there, I didn't know it at the time, but it was Swiss typography, and it was based on the teachings of Basel, the kind of modernist and then postmodernist teachings. So it got a real attitude to the way that they approached graphic design, and that's why it appealed to me somehow. And so I applied and I got in, and it was really quite severe. Like in the first year, we didn't get to use colour until like the third term or something. You know, like everything was. We started off with black squares on grids and very, very simple type design. So it was a real schooling in the basics of graphic design. So I did that, and then as a result of being at Ravensbourne, we were offered an exchange program, which is why I went to Canada to NASCAD, Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, and I did one term there, and it was brilliant. And it was under this tutor called Hanno Esses, who's a very influential educator in North America, who completely rejected the Swiss modernism style. He was German, and he'd been brought up with Swiss modernists, and a lot of Swiss modernists they'd ended up in Canada and North America in the 70s and the 80s. And he hated it. He saw it as a kind of imposition of a style on society that had got no relationship with where this style had originated from. So he taught a completely different type of graphic design, which was all to do with, he called it semiotics, but it was to do with understanding your audience really well, and then designing in a way which really means something and is understandable to them. And it looked it looked dreadful. Most of the output from the college, it was like a local Canada audience. But I found it intellectually really interesting, and it kind of lodged in my head, And then I finished the course at Ravensbourne, and I actually got asked to apply to what was then Central St Martin's by the head of the course, a guy called Tim Foster, who was another brilliant influential educator, and that's how I ended up going on that course to do my masters, and that was it was very different, and I felt like I didn't do much graphic design on that course, but I learnt a lot. It was in Longacre, so it was in Covent Garden. I lived nearby. I lived just near Waterloo, so I walked over the bridge every morning. So I felt like I was in London and experiencing all that London had got to offer. Tim had put together a team of tutors who were really they were doing really well in the profession at that time. It was like people like John Barnbrook and John Warwicker from Tomato and Graham Wood. So it was a really sort of influential set of tutors, and I didn't realise it at the time, but it kind of really rubbed off on me. I think it was good to be around that and to be discussing stuff with them. But that's how I ended up doing that.
Coming out of that, did you do many internships back then and placements and things?
No, I didn't do any. No, I mean, I was dead set against it as well, because I was really arrogant in my and also a bit confident. But I didn't want to be a junior. I just couldn't see the point of it, and I didn't want to be on that kind of career ladder where you get in and work your way up. I never wanted to have a job title ever. I just wanted to sort of do my thing, and so. Which is kind of why I think I sort of meandered for a few years.
Yeah, tell us more about that. So wait. So what was your first title then? Even though you didn't want one.
I think it was. I think it was like 5 years in when I got when I took the corporate coin and went to work at Landor.
Yeah.
But they gave me a title, but I was just like, yeah, whatever. I got no. It just didn't matter to me. And in those 5 years, I'd worked. I had a very influential couple of years and working at a desk in a little studio called the Square Red Studio, which is not around anymore. But there were two guys that had worked in the music industry in the 80s, and they had a chap working there called Rupert Bassett, and Rupert was another Ravensbourne graduate. RCA graduate that did very kind of Swiss modernist typography. And me and him worked on a prospectus for Ravensbourne, funnily enough, in 1994. And that was a really key piece of work for me, because that we had time to do it properly. It was very over-designed when I look back at it, but quite an influential little piece of work. And we just used to talk about design all day long. I mean, we did more talking and discussing than working. But I was thinking, like, in those days, you could afford to do, like, I was freelance, and you could afford to be freelance. You could afford a room to live in London, and you could go and do lots of interesting things around it. So that's what I did. And I basically did that for 5 years, just from like gig to gig, and then in 97, when I was whatever I was, 27, I thought, well, I'd quite like to have a bit more money now, and I went to work at Landor.
Yeah, nice. Do you remember the projects that you worked on? There was a standout project you worked on while you were there in the 5 years.
At Landor.
Yeah.
At Landor.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, I went in and I worked on a rebrand of Cable and Wireless. So it had gone from doing like art projects to like going to Landor and doing huge corporate identities, and then I did a rebrand of a company in Saudi Arabia called Sabic, which is still around. It's a really nice bit of branding work. And then I did a bank in London called Nomura Bank, which is a huge bank. Yeah, so that kind of showed me what I really enjoyed about Landor was I learnt about project management, I learnt about strategy, brand strategy, and I learnt how to operate in a C-suite, in a client C-suite, and how to get along and how to make things happen. I hated the work that Landor did. I mean, the visual output was fucking awful. Like nearly all of it, it was like illustrative rubbish, but they had a real stranglehold on brand consultancy, which then led into brand creative. But I think their best work was the strategy stuff, and I think their creative work was terrible. It was.
Say no more.
I mean, I was sort of embarrassed to be there.
Through the journey that you've been on, Paul, we almost felt this before speaking to you, and obviously we've not spoken to you until today. I think there's times when you seem to dip in and out of agencies, decide to create your own thing, and then step back into the world, then come back out and step back in. What was the sentiment around that? It seems like you just said then, you didn't want to get stuck in like another corporate design job. Where did that come from?
Yeah, well, I think that I suspect, coming back to the name of your podcast, it does come back from like just like my parents, my mum and my dad to some extent, giving me the confidence to keep doing stuff, to follow my nose is how I sometimes describe it. So I wasn't interested in climbing a kind of corporate ladder or going up through the levels of design, design jobs. So when I was at Landor, I got because I got tired with the output from the agency. I remember they sent some guy from San Francisco and to the London office, one of the WPP bods, and he really proudly showed this identity that they'd just done for Lucent Technologies in the States. It's like a red circle. It's like it's painted with a brush. It's fucking terrible. It's terrible. It's like the opposite of what you ought to be doing in design. Anyway, and I thought, right, I've got to leave, and so I just left and I went freelance again, and I went to Imagination. Which and again, it's just a brilliant team of graphic designers and brand people, and I freelanced there, and then they offered me a job, and I went full time there for a while.
Nice. I always remember Imagination they were like number one in was it Design Week? When they used to rate the agencies 1 to 100, Imagination was always there on top.
Yeah. That was to do with their turnover, and their turnover was due to the fact that they did lots of event work, so it was the budgets were just really, really big. And when I went there, I went to work on the Ford account, we were doing the Journey Zone, which is now the O2 for the Millennium Experience. And the team of designers, they were brilliant. You know, they're like Marcus Mora, who went on to open Keller Mora Design in Zurich. Martin Brown, brilliant designer. Lee Deverill, who I've worked with on and off for years. You know, like there are about 20 graphic designers there who were all all top of their game in London at the time. And that's where I met Adrian Caddy. Adrian was the creative director of Imagination at the time, and that's who I ended up working with at Greenspace.
Nice. And then where was it after that? So what was the journey after that?
So I went, after Imagination, I went freelance again. I did, and I did some big agency stuff. I worked at Fitch for a while in Identica, but I mean, it was just to pay the bills, you know.
Yeah.
And then I went to work. I was telling someone this the other day. In about 2004, I got really fed up of the whole thing. And we went on holiday, my wife and I. And I said, I just want to go and work for the best agencies. And she made me write down who I thought the 3 best agencies were at the time. And at the time, I thought it was Spin, BB Saunders, who were very good, and North. So I went to see all 3, and I knew Sean a little bit, but I basically got offered a freelance contract at North and stayed for a year. And I think that really transformed my career, if I can be so bold as to say that, you know, because I think what North were doing and what Sean demonstrated to me was that you can do that really big corporate work and you can do it in a really brilliant way. I think they were trailblazers in that sense. They were doing really cool design work for really big clients. The other thing that I loved about being there was that the studio is beautiful. I haven't been to their new one, but I've heard that it's beautiful as well. So like every little thing was the best. You know, like Sean would have the best crockery, and he'd have the best books, and have the best furniture. Everything was really thought about, and I thought this is what I want to do, you know, eventually.
Yeah, nice. And then what? I love this journey, you know. This is great, you know what I mean? This is really.
Yeah.
I love how you've like found yourself through this, and like I said at the beginning of this, you always knew that it was, you know, you wanted to essentially run your own thing, be your own boss. You know what I mean? With driving your own thing. So I'm really interested in this kind of like dip out to, you know, to what led to it.
Well, I feel like I'm at risk of depressing myself by just sheer fact of how old I am and how long I've been doing this. But after North, the contract came to an end, and Adrian Caddy, who had been my boss, he was creative director at Imagination. He'd just left Imagination, and he'd left with a couple of clients, and one of them was Toyota, and he got asked by Toyota if he'd be up for doing a rebrand of their identity in Europe, and he said yes, and then he phoned me up, and he was a little bit like, fuck's sake, you know, I don't know how to do this, because he was from a kind of events brand background. He'd left, and he said, I've started this thing, it's called Greenspace, can you come and work with me, and we'll create a company together with a couple of others. And we had this job, which was to do a rebrand of Toyota, which was huge, you know. So we built this project, and we built a company of. We were sort of 25 at one point, and we were doing work for Toyota. We were doing work for Honda Formula One. We did delivery of the Formula One car. We did Braun GP, nice. And then the last job that I did there was the Bentley job. So lots of automotive, because the clients that we had come out of our experience at Imagination, where there's lots of automotive. We had some really brilliant designers. We had a creative director called Katie Taylor, Lee Deverill, and we did some really nice work. And I think after 5 years, it was a tough time. So it was 2008. We had the big financial crash. We had clients coming, clients going. I got into this. I was getting annoyed that I was doing all this work and I didn't own half of the business, if you know what I mean. I owned some of the business, and I made up lots of reasons why I wanted to leave and go it alone. I just had a child. Our daughter was like 12 months old, so I was in a good position with Greenspace financially. We got good clients, and we both, Adrian and I, both wanted it to work. But I decided to leave and just start Studio Blackburn. And I think at the time I was just like, I've had enough. I can't, I remember using lots of excuses, but I think that looking back on it, I think the reason was I just wanted to be my own boss and to run my own thing. So I left, and then I started Studio Blackburn in my bedroom in Greenwich. I mean, it literally was. I mean, I was slightly terrified. I had one client, a small client, and a Mac, and I hadn't really been, it's not like I've been designing in the 5 years previous. I'd just been directing things, but I just started again and got a couple of freelancers and went from there.
What's been different this time, Paul? Because you've been on such that whole journey that you've been through. You've started things up. You've gone back freelance. You worked at agencies. What's been different this time? And I mean, over the past, I think it's 14 years ago, right, when you started Studio Blackburn. What was it that was different this time about putting your, drawing that line in the sand and being like, this is it now?
Well, I think there's been two sort of phases at Studio Blackburn. I think the first 8 or 9 years, I was just trying to make it. I was trying to do nice work. I was trying to do work that I felt happy with. I was trying to employ people that I really liked, and build it in a way that was sensible, so that it wasn't a kind of boom and bust type thing. And I think we did that. And I think if you look at our work in the first few years, I think what we were doing was basically a kind of I felt like we were like a contemporary total design. It was like we're still Swiss modernist, but it was nice stuff, pleasant work. And then, and it was going well. And then I just decided that it wasn't like a conscious thing, but when I just saw a lot of young designers coming through doing really amazing work. And I think about 7 or 8 years ago, this industry started to change a little bit, and it's become a lot more kind of, I can only describe it as like more creative, more inventive, more collegiate. It's a lot less critical towards each other than it used to be. And I could see this coming through in young people. And I also noticed that clients were really responding to the younger members of my team in really positive ways, which gave me a lot of confidence. And about 7 years ago, we had a guy start working for us called Mark Jones, who is now creative director, and he started to do things that I would never have done. I mean, it sounds really simple and obvious, but he was like, oh God, I'd never present that to a client. And he would present it to a client, and the client would love it. So Energy was a case in point. And I thought, this is really interesting. This is who I'm going to put my money on. And this is a new direction for us, and I think our work's really changed in the last 6 or 7 years, and has become a lot bolder, a lot more kind of colourful and fresh and impactful. So that's and I love it. I mean, like what I've loved, to come back to your question, the thing that's different is that I'm now in a position of with Studio Blackburn. I'm in a position now where people are coming to us wanting what we do. My role is better defined than it's ever been. I have the conversations with clients and potential clients, but the studio, who are 20 years younger than me, they do the work, and they're just at it and on it. So it's not that I'm doing anything different. It's just that I'm at a very different stage in my life and my career, and it happens that I feel that I'm much better at this than I was at being a designer 30 years ago, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm very good at curating teams, and work and directing things and giving people confidence, both clients and staff. And I really, really enjoy that. So that's what's different. And also, I've got ultimate control. You know, if I say we're not going to show something, then it doesn't get, well, I was going to say it doesn't get shown. We just have an argument and then it doesn't get shown.
It sounds great, and you sound like a great leader to work for, Paul, you know, and what I love, and to give you your flowers, I think, you know, you've had a vision from the start, and everything you've done has built up to that, and you've really stayed true to yourself throughout finding yourself through these kind of endeavours that you've been on. So yeah, congratulations on all your successes. It must feel fucking good. One day I want to sit there and feel going to say the things you're saying, you know. Sorry about my ass.
There was something that I remember a podcast with Astrid Stavro from when she was at Pentagram, and she was saying that it's really hard, this profession, and I think she's right. Like when I talk about it like this, it's really nice because I can step back from it and look at it.
Yeah.
But in those 14 years, there's been a few really desperate times, you know, when it's like, Christ, you know, we've got, you know, that hasn't happened, or we haven't won that job, or we've had to kind of really tighten our belts and things. You know, it's a tough. I think if you're running an agency in London and you're surviving, then you're doing really well, because the level's so high. There's so much competition. It's such an expensive place to live, and if you can retain some creative vision throughout that, then I do think it's exceptional, but it's extremely hard work.
Just on some of those that you mentioned then, Paul, the tough times of running an agency, is there one that comes to mind? And I'm really interested in how you bounce back from some of those bad situations that you get into.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots that come to mind. It's like the worst thing is the couple of occasions when we've had to trim the team, like that. It's excruciating, you know. And there's you know, you because we're just not the type of people that want to ever do that, and running a business demands that of you from time to time. Sometimes it can be because you've lost a client, other times it's just the people that were working for you, they're just not quite right anymore. You've gone in a slightly different direction, but it's excruciating and horrible, and I don't know, I've never met anyone who said that they enjoy those situations. So when we have to let people go, and it doesn't happen very often, that's the thing I like least. But a close second is when we don't win a job that I think we should have won. And that happened to us this year in March. We've got a really great client, which is the IOC, which I think we're going to talk about in a second. And they have a roster of agencies, and we are one of them, and we were asked to pitch for a piece of work with them that's a really interesting future kind of brand that they're developing. And it was a 4-way pitch, and we invested in it financially, and we invested in it in terms of time, and we didn't win it. We came second, which is worse, and sort of you never know whether to believe them. But that floors me for, you know, 72 hours or something. You know, it's really, I take it really personally. Thankfully, not everyone in my team does. They're much better, but I can't bear it. I can't bear losing. It's awful. And it's times like that because I can't stand being at the. It's why I never wanted a job title or to be an employee, because I just can't stand someone else having control over your future. You know, that's the battle that we're working. That's the kind of pinch point all the time.
It's always tricky naming an agency. Everyone we speak to, every person who's founded their own agency, the logo, the website, and the name are always the tricky points. Was you always confident that you was going to use your own name for your agency, or did you go through a madness of rounds trying to think of something else?
No, I just thought that's what I wanted to do, because it was important for me for it to be mine at that time. So it was dead simple. What I should say is that in the last 12 months we are having discussions about the name, and I think this is a periodic thing with agencies. But as we grow and as our kind of focus changes, we're we're constantly talking about whether or not the name is the right name for the ambitions that we have. But at the time of starting the business, it was dead simple for me. I just thought, well, it's me, and I want my name above the door. Thanks very much.
I mean, we've just seen this now with Design Studio, haven't we?
Yeah.
Changing to what they now further.
Yeah. It's strange, isn't it? Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I do think naming's one of the least enjoyable parts of this business. And we've got to a point where if clients come to us and they want naming, we try and persuade them not to. If they want to change names, we try and persuade them not to, because it's you could do it 20 years ago, but you can't do it anymore because every name is taken, and there are such legal ramifications, and you can't explain it to clients that just how complicated it is to try and register a name and the whole legal process. And I just say, look, if you can build a brand, you can build a brilliant brand around an average name, and I'm sure if I got more time I could give you some examples. But so just do that. You could also have the best name in the world, and your brand could be terrible. Just think of it like that.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. When you mentioned then about how you're, obviously, creating. How many people work there? How many people you got working there, Paul?
10
of you.
Yeah.
So when you're hiring, how conscious are you of the culture that you're creating when you're hiring, and how important is that to you?
Oh yeah, it's hugely important. Yeah, we're looking for interesting people and strong people. Steph, who works for us, she describes us all as being a bit wonky. Sorry, I almost said it wrong.
Love it.
Like, and it's a really interesting thought. It's like we're not looking for kind of cookie cutter sort of job title people. We want quality, but we want interesting people that have got points of view and who are intelligent.
Yeah. Beautiful things happen in a room full of misfits.
Where's that from? Is that you?
I wish it. I think I'm paraphrasing Brian Collins. I've heard Brian Collins say it, and I think I've regurgitated it in my own way. But he said something along the lines of this. I always say Brian talked towards like misfits, and when he hires misfits. Do you know what I mean? And stuff like that, and beautiful things come from them.
Yeah, I think that I do think that there needs to be a little bit of a balance. Like it can go wrong. You can you can work with people and think, oh, this will be really interesting, and it goes wrong. You do need people who can get things done in a very efficient way, but you also need people that can, I think, that can think creatively and that can think ahead as well, and also self-edit. Because there's so much always that you could do, but to just be able to get to the sort of envelope of the answer quite quickly is a real advantage.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Yeah, nice. 14 years. That's some time. There's some learnings there. Do you know what I mean? So you run it with Mrs. Blackburn as well, don't you? There's two of you.
I do. Yeah.
So what? Sorry, what's the name?
Is Susie. Yeah.
Susie. Sorry, Susie. Hi, Susie, if you're listening. I hope you are listening, Susie. What role does Susie play?
She's studio director. So she does 2.5 days a week looking after the studio, which she loves. Yeah, she was a agency designer for a long time. She was at Design Bridge and at Landor, so she understands the industry really well. And then she took a bit of time out when we had our daughter, and now she's responsible for making sure everyone is happy and gets biscuits and
keeping everything in check. I love it.
Where did you guys meet, Paul? If you don't mind me asking.
We met at a graphic designer's pub in Clerkenwell.
Nice. The pub. Everyone mentions this pub, Even I swear our own... isn't that the one that Andy Bainbridge used to go down to on a weekend and that?
What's it
called? It's called the Three Kings. And it's,
yeah, Kings, classic. Yeah. We've been there before with Andy. Yeah. No.
It was equidistant between Landor and Design Bridge, but
Yeah.
everyone went there. Like Graphic Thought Facility and all that. It was a real sort of designers pub. We sort of met through friends, and then that's where we met.
Oh, I love it. Nice. So you've got like such a big variety of clients. Before we get into the work now, before we go through a bit of work,
Yeah.
from Trainline to Nopines, how do you go about getting new clients, getting new work? Does it come from word of mouth? Do you add,
Yeah.
do you do new business? How does that work for you?
In the past, it's been through my contacts, and a couple of. There's always been 2 or 3 people around that have been very happy to introduce me to their clients or recommend me to their clients, like marketing people or strategy people. So in the first few years, I really kind of worked those kind of contacts. There was a woman called Molly Watson who really helped me when I set up. She brought us Sage, which was a big job for us at the time, and other things. And then there was a woman called Jemima Bird, who happens to be from Barnsley, but she's a fractional CMO. She put us on the pitch list for Trainline, which we won against Karma Armour. So it's like opportunities like that. But in the last, I'd say in the last 3 or 4 years, we're getting a lot more. I wouldn't call them cult, but people coming to us, because they're seeing what we're doing. But also, I just continue to hustle. It's as simple as that. We decide who we want, and I go after them, and whether I get them or not, something usually happens, and I think it's a part of the business that people might not talk about so much, but you really have to go and you just have to go and talk to people and make sure they know who you are, have a conversation. So I went to the World Design Congress a couple of weeks ago, a 2-day event at the Barbican, and it was brilliant, because you can sit there listening to people, and if you find them interesting, you can follow up straight away afterwards, go and have a coffee with them, just get on their radar, and that's how I do it. So like tomorrow I'm going to Switzerland, and to our client in Lausanne, but I'm using that as a kind of anchor meeting to go off and have other meetings and coffees and stuff that are just chats, So that's how we tend to do it at the moment. Mm-hmm. We're getting a bit more strategic with it. We're doing targets every 3 months. We're changing sectors and things like that.
Yeah, nice. You've done some really lovely stuff, Paul. Like, really nice. You've got a solid portfolio of work there. Yeah, it's really cool. All right. Without further ado, I'm going to share some work. Share the work for you. Start with the Olympic Museum. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great.
Boom. Just let me know you can see that all okay.
Yeah, I can.
Amazing.
Yeah, so we started working with the IOC about 3 years ago. We did some work with another agency on an esports brand for the Olympics, and as a result of that, they asked us if we'd be happy to go on their approved agency list, and we were asked to pitch for this Olympic Museum, which is in Lausanne. It's really beautiful on the water. It's the official Olympic Museum. There are other Olympic museums in the cities where there have been Olympics in the past, but this is the one that where everything is shown. And their brief really was to create an identity that was fit for the digital age. This idea that museums are now, they're carried around in people's pockets. They're on their phones. The majority of the audience that will interact with the Olympic Museum in the future will never actually visit in person. They'll see the collection online and so on. So we had this. We were working within the confines of the Olympic brand identity, which was designed by a Canadian company called Hulse Durrell about 5 years ago. So there's a set of guidelines which you might imagine, it's the colours, and they've got this typeface, got 3 typefaces. But what we did at the museum was we took the Olympic headline typeface, which is what you see here, and we altered the M so it reflected the 3 columns of the Corinthian columns that are in the original Olympic Museum identity, which you also see there. So it's kind of respecting what they had, but it's also introducing something new, and trying to use the available space on a mobile phone screen or on a printed ad or whatever it is. Be very bold, very singular. It's Olympic Museum. It's a little bit like the Museum of Modern Art. It's the main one in the world, and I think they can afford to be very simple yet bold in the way that they express themselves. And we love it. We won the pitch, and we did this, which I'm really pleased with.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, and they're implementing it really well as well. Which is great to see. If you're in there's quite and these are real photographs, by the way. We got one of the photographers that had just graduated from ECAL, which is in Lausanne. They went out and shot this campaign. So I was really proud to have this kind of poster campaign in Switzerland, where physical posters are a real thing. They continue to be the part of the fabric of the kind of urban environment, and are still really important to people in that area. So I was super chuffed with that. But I think the whole thing hangs together really nicely.
Yeah, it does. It's so clean, and I love the icon as well. The icon's a Kitler Paul. Love that, me.
Yeah.
Pure, that's clinic 101 graphic design in it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I sometimes kind of describe our work as kind of we try to hone these things down into like their constituent parts. They're like set of simple ingredients, but then we really try and amplify them. And I think this is a great example of that. And also it's part of a much bigger brand ecosystem, but it respects that, but it really stands out on its own, and it gives the museum its really strong own identity.
Yeah, it does.
I think what's really beautiful about this project and a lot of your other work as well, Paul, is that, like you said, I think you find that simple mark, that simple identity, that simple idea, and then I think how you bring it to life, it's almost like you can see that Swiss inspiration that you've had in the past, but then when you spoke about having a younger team, that come into life as well through the way things move, like the way that you bring motion into things, the way things feel like it could be a printed poster, but then it starts moving, the colour that's used. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. We did a job a few years ago for another client, and we had it was an event, and we had a big 20-metre wide screen in an event space, and it was the first time I'd realised that the way that we design now, you design something that looks great on a mobile phone screen, and you see it up on the big screen, and they look identical. Like you can design for a small screen and a big screen in much the same way and really fill the space. And I think that's what comes across in this, and I think that's the branding part of it. It's like there's the fine design, and then there's the branding, and I think we work at that kind of intersection of those two areas.
Really nice, lovely. And then if I go Brompton,
yeah, I'm worried that that I ought to have my team on talking about these projects, but let's see how I do.
Welcome to the Fold, where everything just clicks into place.
energy.
For 50 years, we've been redrawing the map. So you can go where you're always welcome. Small wheels, big ideals. Foldable, portable, unstoppable. Brompton, life unfolded.
Oh, mate, I love it. Was the before you tell me the brief, was the brief to take it away from financial guys using them and suits wearing them? I love how you made it cool. Do you know what I mean? And people wheeling and that is sick.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah. So they've got they've got an interesting brand challenge because they're in like in the UK and to some extent in Europe, they're seen as this engineered product that's really a little bit nerdy. You know, it kind of fills in the gaps between train and work and so on. But it's got a certain type of audience. But they've also started to sell a lot of products in Asia and also in North America. But in Asia, it's a very different perception of what the product is. It's seen as a lifestyle choice, and the Brompton clubs that are developing in China, and maybe you've seen this, Michael, but maybe not. But I think it's in Shanghai especially. They have like red Brompton owners clubs and things like that, and they go to the park on a weekend and just hang out. You know, so it's not used as a commuting tool; it's used as a lifestyle tool to meet other people. So a little bit like when Paul Smith went to Japan, you know, from Britain, or we were talking earlier about Bentley. You know, Bentley were selling a lot of cars in China, didn't really understand why. Brompton have got a little bit of that going on, so they need something that can that can work in the UK, and that a set of elements that are very much core brand, that are fixed and non-negotiable. But they also wanted to develop the brand so that it could be worked with locally in China or in Singapore or wherever, and can be adapted to local environments and local styles and local trends and so on and so forth. So it's a classic fixed and flexible identity that gives them a set of assets that they can all use and should use, but also gives them permission to do different things with the brand. So that was kind of core to the brand. This positioning of life unfolded, that wasn't our idea. That came from Chris, the client, the CMO at Chris Willingham, who's a fantastic client. I'll come back to in a second. But Chris loved this idea of life unfolded. It's got a double meaning. You know, it's like it's about what can you do with life and where will this product take you. And he wanted an identity that behaved in that way. So we just thought, well, right from the off, it's got to be an identity that's got motion at its heart. This product moves. The product itself animates, you know, when it folds out and folds back in. So we wanted to animate the brand and animate it in a way that the behaviour of the animation reflects the behaviour of unfolding the bike and folding the bike. So we've given them those movements, if you like, you know, and we want them to use them. And the life unfolded line just folds out from the Brompton rectangle and it creates another rectangle. So it's just this idea of boxes unfolding. Super simple. And yeah, that was the core of it. That was the starting point anyway. The thing about this project is Chris Willingham comes from a marketing quite a stellar marketing background, and he plugged us in to do this piece of work at just the right time. They developed the positioning, and they wanted to get from a relatively static brand with a recognisable kind of face to the world to something much more dynamic and that could be taken on by their partners in other parts of the world and really made to work for them. And it's it makes such a big difference having a client that understands what you can do for them and just helps you on the way rather than saying show us what you've got, you know. So it felt like a real really as collaborative as a kind of client relationship can be. It's very, very good.
When I first started working, the first brand that I worked on was Brompton. It was when I was working at this company called Cork Wallace, run by a guy called Mike Wallace, who used to go to our uni. And we went to this event one night, and it was basically customize your own Brompton. And we were quite pally with the client, and somebody got word of mouth that we could just build our own custom Brompton, and the studio could have one. So me and this girl that I was working with at the time, Nicola, like, we got stuck in. We made this crazy multicolored Brompton, and we took it home. And then the boss, Michael Wallace, he got an invoice come through for about $3,500. We were like, fuck. Anyway, back to your beautiful designs, Paul.
Did you keep?
No, we didn't. It stayed on the office wall.
It
stayed on the office wall as like like a feature piece. I think because I think that the owner was hurting inside how much this bloody Brompton bike had just costed him. And then a few years later, I saw him bombing around on it in Farringdon. It was like every colour you could possibly imagine. I'll send you a picture of it when we finish the podcast. It's mad.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, I mean that is quite interesting, by the way, that you can have a Brompton in any colour, but that doesn't mean that you should choose to do your communications showing every colour under the sun. It's not always the answer, but we came up with this idea of having one colour that is the core colour. We decided that it should be blue, and they agreed with us. And it's a really powerful thing for a brand, I think, to just say no to what they could do and just focus on what they should do. And I think this idea of having one strong colour in a crowded marketplace, it makes it another really strong brand ingredient. It doesn't solve everything, but I think it's a real strength and a real asset. So we persuaded them to do that, and I think I think the blue, it's like royal blue, it's kind of London Underground blue, works really nicely for them, and it's a positive colour. So that's why we arrived at that. You also probably saw there was a little set of symbols of different shapes for different cities in the world. And I think it's, if you keep going, we did the iconography, but we did some, so that's the classic bike symbol. I think if you go down here, or maybe it was somewhere else.
Overview, motion. Is it in the overview?
Yeah, I think it's in here. Yeah, so we did all the little. Yeah, so the Berlin and the Paris and so on. So we just had this. We thought it was a really nice idea of having different symbols that are based on the shapes of bicycle parts. That each city could own, so that you could just develop this kind of like symbol or sticker system. So it was so that's the part of the idea that's kind of flexible, and it's suggestive to these to agencies in China or wherever, that you can be creative, you can do things, but you just need to respect these core ideas as well.
Yeah, it's super clean and confident. It feels almost like a fashion brand. I love how you kind of like wiped the dust off it and made it more accessible to a younger audience and still appeal to my dad who wants to be cool. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like my dad would rock this out, and it's really kind of like confident in its usage of that kind of like royal blue, like you said, popping blue. Yeah. It's nice, really clean.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great product. It's one of those, isn't it? Every time you mention Brompton to anyone, they smile. Yeah. It's a good positive. It's a great company. It's a great story, and it's one of those brands that people just love, but they're not sure why.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I'm the same. I mean, I've never even ridden a Brompton, but when I look at this, and especially with the identity that you've given it, I feel reassured that it's well made, almost. Yeah. Like it feels like when I get on it, if I buy a Brompton, I'm going to have it for the rest of my life kind of energy, Yeah. It's not something, and the animations and everything, you've got everything unfolding. Like you said, it's super simple, but it's right. It's the answer, right?
Yeah.
I love
it.
Good
answer.
Great. Satisfying. Amazing. And for the third one.
Right, this third one, right?
Yeah.
So we did this, so it's So Energy. and we rebranded them about 5 years ago, and we did a very, you can see it top left here, we did a very simple word mark. They're a 100% renewable energy provider in Britain. They're quite big. They've got about 300,000 customers, and they're doing well. But they're up against the big boys in a market that's really competitive. It's not a sexy, interesting sector, but no one really wants to think about what they're going to spend, who they're going to choose for their energy bills until they really have to. And most people choose their energy provider from a price comparison website, which gives you a really small bit of real estate square. So that logo type was kind of designed to really pop out of a little square, a bit of real estate. So we did a brand for them, and then about a year ago we refreshed the brand, and we made it one colour, which is this kind of acidic green yellow, depending on how people see it, and black. So we persuaded them to go really bold. We found an area within the brand landscape of energy that a colour that wasn't being used, that looked really good, and we persuaded them to go down this route, and it's working very well. And as a result of that, they've asked us to do this campaign, which is going live this week of the 6th of October at some point, so probably by the time this podcast comes out. Yeah, nice. And it's the first time that we've done what might once have been called traditional advertising. So it's 3 adverts that are kind of they're brand building adverts that are going to be used across a whole range of media. And if you click forwards, it's dead simple. It's we did they're trying to increase unprompted awareness. I think if you go to the next slide, just keep going. Yeah, so on here we presented 4 concepts that were, again, using simple language to just get across this idea of how So Energy do renewables, but they do it in a very simple way, obvious choice, trying to make it easy for consumers to believe and to click through. Client like concept 1 and concept 4. So we banged them together, and if you click on a couple of pages, we just came up with this dead simple idea of people doing strange things with their energy, like ironing toasties, or sitting in front of fans pretending to be a superhero or whatever. And this tagline, we do energy, you do you, So Energy. And we also had this additional kind of visual concept that when the advert begins, you get a close-up of a face of the person that's been filmed in the advert, and you can't quite tell what's going on, and then the camera pans back and there's a reveal. So it's a relatively simple kind of creative idea, and I think if you click forward, yes, I mean this.
Nice, the art direction's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is really nice.
Yeah, and it's I've had very little to do with this, and that's a real pleasure. I mean, it's we got the brief. The team have done it themselves. They've developed the concepts and the ideas. They've chosen the director that they wanted to work with, and they've styled the shoot in exactly the way that they wanted to style it. So it's a bit of a departure for us, but it's a really interesting one. And it's been it's really great for me, because I can now understand that we can do this type of work, and that gives me the ability to go and talk to new and potential clients about doing this for them. And I think also, and it's probably, I'm sure you're aware of this in both of your roles, there's this crossover, and like Uncommon obviously are leading the charge on this, but this crossover between advertising and brand now is something that I think brand agencies are starting to understand, and they're starting to occupy that area with really interesting, meaningful adverts that are fit for purpose in the way that people now they now digest their information. This year, about 6 months ago, I went into the studio one day, and I realised after about an hour that I wasn't needed. it was the first, and I was really conscious of it. First time ever. It was like everyone was doing something, everything was happening, and I was like, what am I doing? What am I meant to be doing now? You know, and it was a really sobering. It was really interesting. It really made me think for the first time that I've got a little bit of time to think about what my role in this is and what I could do with it in the future, and that's what I've been thinking about, because it's the position that I wanted to get to, and it's the position that I wanted the company to get to, but I wasn't prepared for it, and it's been interesting to think about where we go next and what my role is to make that happen. Just to answer your question a little bit more as well, I just like when I see them doing stuff that's such high quality, it's a brilliant feeling. I mean, it's I've got no desire to jump in and say, oh, I know how to make this a bit better. I just think it's just not, that's not what I'm meant to be doing. It's just, or try it my way. It's just like, God, it's brilliant. You know, what you're doing is brilliant. Mark, my creative director, he has a couple of, he's quite insightful, and one of his insights is that, you know, there's no way that everyone is going to like everything that we do, and I'd never thought about that before. You know, like I always thought everyone should like what we do because it's brilliant, and it's quite liberating to think, oh yeah, he's right. You know, it's like this is great. You know, we've all worked really hard on it. It's great. Not everyone will like it, but it's going out the door.
Do you feel like you've enjoyed the journey?
Yeah, I do. I think it's been. I think despite the low points, which can be crushing, you know, when things aren't going well or when you don't win a job, I think the journey's been brilliant, and it's a really, really interesting world to be part of, and just for so many reasons, just like dropping into all these different sectors and different companies, and meeting all these different people and holding your own with these people and learning things. It's a really rich career, I think. It's really rich and rewarding. So I've enjoyed it, but there's been real moments of depression and doom, and I think I think that's the creative journey.
How have you controlled your ambition to have your own thing? Because like I relate to everything you're saying, do you know what I mean? And it's music to my ears, to you know what I mean? And everyone always tells me, and everything I read, and everyone who's really successful always says that the journey is the best bit, do you know what I mean? And we're constantly striving for this next thing and this next thing and this next thing, and you almost like miss the moment that you're really in at the moment, and that is the thing that, you know. So I'm really interested to like know you sat on, you know, that was that sobering moment that you mentioned, and you walk in the studio and you I visualize that moment, Paul, that you just spoken about, when I can walk into my studio one day and see everyone just doing it and then being like, I've done this now.
Yeah.
What's next, Paul? How do you stay on the edge of your seat? How do you keep feeding yourself? And more importantly, how do you keep feeling that ambition, you know, that ambitious Paul, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think if I was able to answer your question directly, I think that might not do me any good. I think if I knew the answer, I wouldn't get out of bed tomorrow, you know, I'm become depressed. I don't know where my ambition comes from, and I don't know where my love for this career comes from, and I've learned to not question it. I've got no. It freaks me out when I talk to my contemporaries and they're talking about planning for their retirement and things like that. I find it a bit of an insult, because I just don't think they take it as seriously as I do. Like I want to do this until I drop. So that's how I feel. Yeah. If you had told me I was going to, if you had told me I was going to work for the Olympics, I would have thought, well, I'll do that and then I'm done. But now I just think, I work for the Olympics. You know, they're a tricky client. You know, it's hard work, and all I'm thinking is, right, well, who do we want next? You know, what's next? What can we do to keep it going? So. I don't know. That's just how I feel. I get up in the morning and look at what's ahead of me and think, right, I'm going to go and get the next big thing, and that really incentivizes. I just feel naturally enthusiastic about what we do. It's nice to talk about it. I mean, I never, you know, it's I don't really spend much time talking about this, but that's I feel motivated And I guess I'll just the thing you said about the journey is the thing. I mean, it's brilliant, you know. Like when I go into the studio, like there's not many jobs where you can go into a studio, whether you're the boss or whether you're working there, and you can put the kettle, you know, you can make a cup of coffee, you can sit around, talk about some creative work, you can talk about what you watched last night, or, you know, or which agency is doing the, you know, it's like banter all day long. Really, you know, we have a laugh. It's informal, but we work really hard. You know, when I play squash, right? Well, I don't, because I've done my knee in, but I play squash with a group of blokes here in Blackheath, and they've all had 30-year careers in the city, and they're really nice, but they're bored to death. You can tell they are, you know, with their careers. And I feel almost guilty sometimes talking about what I'm doing. You know, you can sort of design your own life, and that's what I love about it.
I love it.
That's really beautiful, especially the part on the retirement scheme. I think so many people ask me this question. I can imagine with you too. And somebody literally asked me 2 days ago, what are you going to be doing in 20 years' time? I said, I'm going to be doing this. This is it. Yeah. What about when you retire? I'm probably just going to keep doing this until the day I die. Like we love it, and again, that's why we're doing this podcast. Yeah. I think this last segment, that question that you just prompted then, Christian, was great. I think like these are the nuggets for like why we do this, Paul. It's so great to sit here and be able to have these conversations. So moving on, we've got 4 final questions now, and again, we're still lingering around similar topics. I know that obviously we asked about what your mum before, but what does your mum think you do for a living? I've got an idea that she probably has an understanding, but what does your mum think you do for a living?
She thinks that I work in a way that is unimaginably hard and stressful, and she doesn't quite understand why I do it, I think. But she has. We used to do. We used to do these workations where we took the whole company to Italy for a couple of weeks in the summer, and we did one, and she came with us, and it was really funny because like her main concern is that I'm earning money, simple as that, you know. But her second thing is that she does get to know the people. She really likes getting to know the staff and things like that. She's got a sort of idea, you know, that what we do is creative, and it relies on having relationships with people who've got money to spend. But beyond that, she hasn't got a clue. What was it? I did. Maybe it was when I'll tell you what it was. We did when we did Brawn GP, which is the weirdest job to do an identity for a Formula One team. And Brawn, they won the F1 championship, and she could understand that. It's like, oh, you've done that logo that's on that car that's won a Formula One race. Like, that's really simple for a parent to understand. Yeah. She understood that, but she doesn't understand this world of brand, really. Bless her.
I love that, Paul, by the way. And I love that you took her to Italy. That melts my heart. I love that. All of that. I love.
She's a pain in the arse as well.
Respectfully. What advice would, with your knowledge and with your experiences, Paul, what advice would you give to someone setting up a design studio, good or for better or worse?
It's really difficult to answer. I don't know. I'm very good at helping out with specific problems. But if you're setting up a design studio, I just don't know what I'd say. I mean, there's lots of obvious things, like if you can, you know, like financial things, keep your overheads down. Don't try and grow too quickly. I'll tell you how I'd answer it. I think I'm all right saying this because I say it to everyone these days. I've become really sanguine about other agencies. You know, like when I was younger, I used to be very critical of other agencies, and I think now if you're running an agency, you're doing well. But there's one agency that I'm jealous of, and that is, and it's for a specific reason, and that's Couture. And I think the reason I'm jealous of Koto is because they've been very focused from the off about what they do, and they've been able to grow it very quickly. Like, it's 10 years, it's not that quick, but in a really well managed way. So I think I'd probably just recommend having a very strong vision of where you want to get to, and then being very disciplined. That would be I feel like that would be the opposite of how I've done it, because I've just followed my nose, like really. So does that help? Does that make sense?
No, it really does.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
really good,
you
Paul.
hit the nail on the head with again, me and Michael speak to a lot of people who are running their own studios and stuff like that, whether it's new or whether it's been established or whatnot. And I think it's identifying the simple nature of what your thing is, like what the vision is, like what you're aiming for, what you're shooting for.
I would also say, don't set up with another designer. I would if you want to be big, if you want to be good and survive, you need to set up with a strategist or a new business person, someone who gets you but has got no common skill. Like, it's dead simple. Like, I call it like the 7-year studio graveyard. There's hundreds of agencies, two graduates set up together, 7 years later they fall out, they never talk again.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, for instance, if a designer sets up with a strategist or a client head or whatever it is, what do you think? Why do you think that relationship can be more successful than designer on designer?
I think it's. I think you both have your well-defined roles, and you stick to them. And I think if you've got, like, the part of your brain that does new business is a different part of the brain that does design, and the bit of your brain that develops skills for dealing with clients is you don't need to be worrying about that when you're designing. So I think, and again, Koto have done this brilliantly. I think theirs is like a 3-legged stool, but just very well defined roles. So your role is to get new business. Your role is to write the proposals, and your role is to lead the creative. So really, it's something like that. I think is the best way to set up. I think two creatives setting up together, very obvious thing to say, but creative visions change over time, and I think most creative duos that do fall apart over creative differences and then financial differences.
That's really interesting,
Michael,
Paul.
Yeah, please. Michael, lad, listen, just to say straight up, lad, I love you so much, bro, and let's keep this 100 the best we can with the podcast.
Don't do it.
It's really interesting because we talk, because Christian worked at Turner Duckworth, and I think maybe something that's worked for those guys is that the two founders, they lived so far apart from each other. One was in the UK, one was in the US, and maybe that's what kept them with some difference. So maybe
they do speak to that.
Christian.
They do speak to that. No, they do speak to that with the 24-hour difference, because they wasn't in the same room all the time and stuff like that. And obviously back in the day when they first set up to, you wasn't as connected as you was now. Do you know what I mean? There weren't a Zoom call that you jumped on a FaceTime. Do you know what I mean? It was email, and you pick up the email in the morning when the other person's gone to bed. And I think they removed the ability to react to things emotionally in the moment. Do you know what I mean? They had to literally sleep on everything. Honestly, Paul, you give us some real gems there. And more than you probably think you have. I can see Michael, from what I can see through the screen, like smiling his little head. These are conversations that me and Michael are trying to understand. Do you know what I mean? And we respect your knowledge, and we really respect your experience. So when you're speaking, we really are listening. So thank you very much for them insights. They're gold,
pleasure,
Paul. Like, really gold.
There's
going for the future of Studio Blackburn, maybe a new name, pending potentially. What does the future look like?
Well, we're trying to grow it, and the reason that we're trying to grow it is because I feel that I owe it to the team to grow it. I feel like we're sort of 4 or 5 years into a really good quality body of work with the same team, and I want to keep them incentivized. I think there's a practical point to it, which is I can't continue to keep them incentivized if we stay at the same size. So I need to grow it to enable them to get everything from their careers that they need to. But I also feel like I owe it to myself to grow it as well. Not to, I keep saying not to grow it to sell it, but to grow it to a point where we are attractive to suitors. And I think that's perhaps the next big incentive for me to get to that point. To get to a bigger turnover, a bigger team, but maintain the quality. I mean, I want to be the best design company in the world. I mean, it's like whether we ever will be or not, I've got no idea. But that's the thing that drives me on every day.
Say no more. What
Say
a
no
way
more.
to end the podcast. That is it. That Bruce Duckworth it was the first. Bruce Duckworth said to me, he passed me this book once, and it was like Man the Gap, and he mentioned something to me like he was like, look, I'm always aiming for the horizon. Do you know what I mean? I'm never actually going to reach it, and it's good every now and then en route to that horizon to just stop and just be like, we've done all right in these 14 years, Paul. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he's really right. He was a wise person, and I think I'm sure you find this as well. But it is difficult to just stop and take stock and let it sink. Especially, I mean, I get the sense that the two of you are from a relatively similar background to me, and this idea of moving away and moving up and achieving things in life, it's based on a rejection of something and moving towards something else. And I think that is, you always feel like you're on slightly shaky ground. I do anyway. And so I don't like pausing. I like to keep going. But when I do pause and have a look, we are demonstrably doing all right.
We're doing all right. Listen, and and to all the listeners too, you're doing all right. The only thing stops us if we stop ourselves, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just keep doing stuff. Just keep moving.
Yeah.
Keep getting up in the morning and shooting your
Exactly.
shots. I love it. I love it, Paul. Thank you so much for all of your honesty, your knowledge, your time on a Sunday. Big up Susie Blackburn too.
She'll love that. She's out on the lash, but she'll love that.
If you are still listening, hopefully. And Paul, I hope we're all in a room together at some point, and I can show you.
Oh, that'd be lovely.
Live in the flesh, thank you again.
No, that'd be really nice. When you're next in London, come see us, and if I'm in New York, I'll do the same.
Paul.
That'd be lovely.
Please do. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Nice to meet you both.
Paul. Thank you very much.
Paul.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye.